Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in, and hello if you're new. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is the second part of last week's Homemaking Monday, which was all about being a Proverbs woman. Not specifically Proverbs 31, just Proverbs, because there are a lot of Proverbs that I think kind of get forgotten about what it means to be a godly woman. And then today we will be looking at Proverbs 31. So if you see me looking down, that's why. My Bible's right here. I've got a notepad over here. So yeah, if you see me looking down, that's why. I do encourage you to grab your Bible, read along if you feel like it, but let's begin. All right, everybody, I hope you've grabbed yourself a cup of coffee like I have. And let's get started. All right, so I went ahead, if you see me looking down, it's because I do have my notes here a bit. And I went ahead and I wrote down the main points of this Proverbs 31 woman that I want us to think about while I read Proverbs 31 verses 10 through 31. I'm not gonna focus on the beginning 9 because they don't talk about being a wife, being focused. But I wanted to think over these descriptions that I kind of noticed as the main theme of this Proverbs 31 woman, just kind of keep them in our minds while I read through these. So the first thing is that she's a hard worker, she's fearless, she's considerate, and she inspires trust and freedom in her family. All right, Proverbs 31:10. Who can find a capable wife? She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will not lack anything good. She rewards him with good, not evil, all the days of her life. She selects wool and flax and works with willing hands. She is like the merchant ships, bringing her food from far away. She rises while it is still night and provides food for her household and portions for her female servants. She evaluates a field and buys it. She plants a vineyard with her earnings. She draws on her strength and reveals that her arms are strong. She sees that her profits are good, and her lamp never goes out at night. She extends her hands to the spinning staff and her hands to hold the spindle. Her hands reach out to the poor, and she extends her hands to the needy. She is not afraid for her household when it snows, for all in her household are doubly clothed. She makes her own bed coverings. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known at the city gates, where he sits among the elders of the land. She makes and sells linen garments. She delivers belts to the merchants. Strength and honor are her clothing, and she can laugh at the time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and loving instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the activities of her household and is never idle. Her sons rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also praises her. Many women are capable, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord will be praised. Give her the reward of her labor, and let her works praise her at the city gates. I love this passage. I think pretty much every Christian woman does, at least I hope they do. But I love this. This is what I think we all aspire to be. But so going back to those 4 main points, she's a hard worker, she's fearless, she's considerate, and she inspires trust and freedom. If you go to the very first verse, well, that we read, Proverbs 31:10, who can find a capable wife? She is far more precious than jewels. And then let's go down a little bit. Proverbs 31:13. She selects wool and flax and works with willing hands. If you look at this, throughout more of just those 2 verses throughout this passage, there is that common theme of she works hard. She's not afraid of work. And what's more, one of the things that stood out to me is she doesn't seem to be a lover of sleep. In this self-care era, I think we all love sleep. And then I know that this is one of my main struggles. I'm open about that with pretty much anybody I meet, that if I could sleep for 13 hours a day, I'll go even more than that. If I could sleep for like 18 hours a day, I probably would. I love my sleep. There's nothing I love more than just laying in bed. Like, it is my favorite place in the world. I'm not even gonna lie. But is that wise? Is that what the Lord calls of me? No. And I love that picture of the woman where she rises while it is still night, and then her lamp never goes out at night. I was thinking about that. It's almost like Benjamin Franklin's early to bed and early to rise makes man healthy, wealthy, and wise. But then with her, I mean, obviously she's still getting her necessary sleep, because to not do that would be foolish, but she's not the first one to go to bed and the last one to wake up. And I think about that because for me, that has been a challenge at times, especially if I'm emotionally going through something. But I have found that by practicing the discipline of waking up, even when I don't feel like it, staying up a little bit extra when needed, even if I don't feel like it, really does make a difference. Beyond that, she's fearless. She doesn't have to worry about when it snows, about when COVID-19 hits and she loses her job. She doesn't have to worry because, one, she trusts in the Lord. She knows where her source comes from. It says a woman who fears the Lord will be praised. She knows who her God is. She fears him. She's doing this with and for him. So when she loses her worldly source of income, she doesn't have to be afraid. She knows where it all comes from. But beyond that, she has made preparations. She was wise. She's not afraid for her household when it snows, for all in her household are doubly clothed. They have enough. They have enough to get by. But her clothing is even fine linen and purple. It's lavish. She's not doing the scraps. She's doing it well. And I think that that does go back to her being hardworking. If you're a sluggard, you're not, go to the ant, thou sluggard, learn their ways and be wise, is what he says. And if a man doesn't work, he's not going to eat. If she was lazy, I highly doubt that her clothing would be fine linen and purple. At least not the godly woman. But because she works hard, because she works wisely, when calamity hits, she still has enough to get by, right? When calamity hits, even if the money runs out, she knows that the Lord is her provider and that she has done her best in the harvest time, as some would say. She's done her best in the time of plenty to prepare for this, so that when things happen, as they do, as we all know right now, when things happen, she can take a step back. She can take a deep breath. She can laugh at the time to come, even in the middle of pandemics, because she knows she's been faithful. She's done her bit, and she trusts her Lord for the rest. I really do treasure that, and I want to mentally lay hold of that in this season. What does that mean to look to the Lord for my provisions, while also knowing I've done my best and I will continue to do my best with what I have. So I don't need to worry. It's the principle of faithfulness that really does breed fearlessness, I think. But beyond that, she's considerate. There's always this one woman that comes to mind for me. Growing up, I was a nanny and a personal assistant for the majority of my before the middle school, all of that pre-professional work life is, I guess how I'll put it. I was a nanny and a personal assistant, and the woman I worked for, she homeschooled her children, so they were always there too. And every time I came into work at her house, they could be having a rough day because life happens. But still, she always came in, big smile, big hug, and had a cup of coffee for me. And that made such a difference to me. That sense of belonging in her household, even though I was working for her, she cared for me. And I think about that with the portions for her female servants. She's being considerate. She had a coffee for me. Even when her world was going crazy, she still had a portion for her female servant. Not only that, but she had trained her daughters to know how I like my coffee. I didn't ask for that. Who goes into work and expects their boss to bring them a coffee? But this was a godly woman. This was a woman who truly feared the Lord, and she has influenced me in so many ways. But because she truly feared the Lord, she was fearless in those days of calamity. And even in the middle of when her life was crazy, because it was sometimes, all of us experience that from time to time, she remembered my coffee. And I know it's so small and so minor, but just that cup of coffee, but it did always stick out to me as a physical expression of that, of remembering portions for her female servants. That's how I want to be, considerate like that. And then the fourth point, the Proverbs 31 woman inspires trust and freedom. I think that that's the part that a lot of us struggle with, honestly, is the inspiring trust and freedom. You can't inspire trust and freedom if there isn't peace in the home. If you know that if you go out and do something, even if it's like something minor, I'm not talking about going out and sinning, but I mean, if your husband knows that if he goes out for one night with the guys that he's going to come home to a fight, or that he's going to come home to chaos, there's not this sense of freedom. There's not this sense of trust. And if you look at this verse, Proverbs 31:23, her husband is known at the city gates where he sits among the elders of the land. That for me has always stuck out as that is a man who feels freedom. His wife isn't nagging at him, come home. And if you look at last week's video, there is that of the nagging wife. And I think that that really is the contrast of, are we going to be a nagging wife? Or are we going to be a wife that inspires freedom so that our husband can sit at the city gates with the elders of the land? I think that when given freedom, true freedom and love and support, a lot of these godly men that society is putting down would flourish. I mean, if you look at today's society and what they're saying about men, so much of the dialogue is about putting men down. And that's so not biblical. That is so not biblical to make man, just because he's a man, the dunce. But that's what we do. Something else that I feel like I want to add to this does again go back to last week, and it's something that I genuinely wish I could like drill it into the head of every Christian woman out there. And that is, you know, barring abuse. That's a whole nother story. Barring abuse, there is so much joy and peace and freedom in a marriage to be found when wives, you just submit. I mean, I know it's hard. I do. I'm not the best at this. I was repenting to my husband last night because I wasn't being the best at being a submissive wife. But there is so much freedom to be found when you pursue that as a woman. In my notes, I put Ephesians 5:22-24. And it's interesting. This was actually my quiet time for today. You know, my daily Bible reading. I do a one-year Bible and I do a little Bible study alongside that. And my one-year Bible had me in Proverbs 31. And my Bible study had me in Ephesians 5. So I was just like, okay, Lord, see what you want me to talk about. The focus you want me to have. But again, it's also a topic I'm genuinely just so passionate about, because I've seen the fruit of it in my life. But going to Ephesians 5, verse 22. Wives, submit to your own husbands, not every husband on the street, not every man on the street, to your own husbands, submit as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church. He is the Savior of the body. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so wives are submit to their husbands in everything. Everything. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her to make her holy, cleansing her with the washing of water by the word. He did this to present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or anything like that, but holy and blameless. In the same way, husbands are to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. I think in today's society, And don't get me wrong, I love living in this modern world. I really do believe that we all who are alive right now were created and destined and formed for this era. But however, there is something right now going on, this idea that we can write off submission as old-fashioned. And that as the modern woman, we who are so evolved, I guess you could say, can write that off. And I understand that it's been abused, the submission of the wife. I really do. But I don't think that that gives us freedom to simply write it off or to say that that's simply old-fashioned and we are, you know, modern women. The Bible's timeless. That's not an excuse. Just putting it bluntly. It's not an excuse, honey. The Bible's timeless. And there is so much joy to be found in submitting to your own husband, not every man on the street, even if they're not loving you the way that you think that they should. Even if they're not leading you the way that you think that they should. He doesn't talk about that. The Bible never talks about, you know, submit to your husband unless he's not doing it the way you think you should, unless you disagree with him. Then it wouldn't be submission. Then it wouldn't be submission. But he says rather submit to them in everything. And I was thinking about this, you know. I was thinking about it earlier as I was preparing for this video. And sometimes I've learned in my life, submission means telling my piece. I'm not a mouse in my house, if you haven't noticed. I'm not silent, but I do submit. I do speak my piece and then I submit. He knows, my husband knows. His word is final. But when I disagree, as I have at times, he also knows I'm gonna go in that bathroom and I'm gonna take it up with the Lord. But I'll take it up with the Lord. I'm not gonna take it up with my husband and cause fights and arguing and screaming and shouting. And where does that get you? The best way to end an argument is to submit, wives. That's the best way to end it. And if you really still at the end of the day feel that you disagree with it and it's really bothering you, take it up with the Lord. Take it up with the Lord. If you feel that your husband's not hearing you, take it up with the Lord. But ultimately, you are to submit. By taking it up with the Lord, you are practicing not only that submission to your husband, but you're also creating that dialogue with the Lord so that you're not getting pent up. That's the last thing we need, is to get pent up, right? And then, I don't know, anytime 5 years from now, everything explodes. Take it up with the Lord, because that is what we account for. We don't account for his decisions. We don't. Excuse me. We account to the Lord for how we submitted to him. When we give him freedom, when we inspire that freedom by submitting to our husband, by loving on our husband, by trusting our husband himself, trusting him, expecting the best of him instead of expecting him to fail. When we respect him, when we work hard so that the house remains in order, when we're fearless, when we put all of our trust in the Lord so that we're not these over-emotional wrecks, when we're considerate, when we're thinking of others, we're not being selfish. It says that her sons rise up and call her blessed, that this is what her husband says of her. Many women are capable, but you surpass them all. I would love to hear my husband say that of me, wouldn't you? Many women are capable. Many women are beautiful, but you surpass them all. So I leave you with this challenge for next week. Focus on these 4 descriptions of the godly woman, the godly wife, the hard worker, the fearless woman, the considerate woman, and the woman who inspires trust and freedom. Ponder those. Think about how you can implement them in your life. And I'm gonna leave you with a challenge. I challenge you this week, and I would love to hear your feedback. If you try it, please let me know how it went for you. But I challenge you this week, if you're married, to try and wake up about a half hour before your husband, if possible. I understand if it's not, you know, you guys know my husband, he's a first responder. His hours are sometimes crazy, but if it's possible to where you are able to wake up around the same time as him, I challenge you to wake up about a half hour earlier and use that time to make his coffee the way you know he likes it. And then get your time with the Lord. So then that way when he wakes up to a gift from you already. I think that there's something so beautiful about that. And more importantly, there is something so just, I think, healing in us to wake up. And the first thing we do in the morning is we speak with the Lord and we think of somebody else. We do something for somebody else. I think that that's just such a good practice. So that's part 1 of the challenge. Part 2, when something comes up where everything in you wants to argue it, you want to debate it, you disagree, submit. Submit. Speak what you need to say, kindly, gently, with love, and then end it with, but you're my husband, and I'll do what you think is best. I trust you, and I submit to you. And then leave it at that. And if there's still that tension within you, lock yourself in the bathroom for a while and pray. Take it up with the Lord. But then just see how that goes. Kind of monitor how that goes if you do that every time that there's that tension in your home life this week. Practice submitting and then see how it goes. Even if he's still not loving you the way that you think he should, this is besides that. That's his job. Your job is how you submit. And if there's any of you watching this who aren't married, maybe you're still living at home with your parents, I challenge you to do the same. I really do. I think that there is so much good to come from practicing this submission as a young woman still living under her parents' roof, to practice that with your parents. It gets you kind of ready. It gets you set for when you're married, to already have that submission muscle built to where you're able to submit with confidence because you know that you're not making yourself out to be less than you are. You're not letting yourself be walked over. You know the difference. It kind of really does strengthen a muscle there to practice godly submission as opposed to rebellion, which is its own muscle and habit. But yes, I will leave you guys with that. I would love to hear any suggestions. If you have any ideas for next week's video, I'm not quite sure what I want to talk about for next Monday. So please do leave some ideas in the comments below. Please do like, comment, subscribe. If you try the challenge, please let me know how it goes for you. I would really love to hear it. And I will see you next time, next Monday, for another Homemaking Monday.